Last year, I released a video called Everything I Read in 2023. I went through every manga that I finished, which didn't include things that I dropped. So without further ado, here is everything I finished in 2024. We first start with Client, a story of indecisiveness that had elements of Junji Ito but didn't necessarily blow me away, so I gave it a 6 out of 10. Lunchtime Accomplice, a sweet story opening into the societal norms of appetites within high school. 7. Girl's Last Tour, an engaging slice of life that had me thinking of life's most meaningful questions. 8.5 out of 10. Swimsuit World, a sopping wet world. This was so much unnecessary ecchi. I did not like this. 3.5. Tasogare Schrödinger, an interesting take on traditional depictions of superpowers, but meh. 6. Until I Melt You. This was just more Yuri on Ice, which I am always down for in my life, so I gave it a 9. The Perfect Sheep, a gripping plot from start to finish and managed to span across a long timeline despite the page count. 8 out of 10. The Voice of a Mermaid, a great execution of explaining a world and flashing out a relationship dynamic of pet mermaid and human owner while having a sadistic overall tone. 8 out of 10. Misa-chan. I thought it was going to be a boring story about a sad Japanese family, but boy was I proven wrong. It was a fantastic twist, and I'd highly recommend. 8.5. Lemons. A very beautiful front panel and followed a very wholesome relationship that took decades to blossom. 8. Someday It Will Be Zero. It showcased how sometimes the most generous people are often the ones who are the most lonely. I liked it, so I gave it a 7. After the Third Heroine. A delightful spin on a typical delinquent high school girl attempting to win over a popular boy. 7.5. Thermae Rome. I loved the fusion of ancient Roman architecture with modern day Japan. This would have made me way more engaged in history as a kid. Where was this when I was studying my GCSEs? 7.5. Run on Your New Legs. An insightful manga into the world and challenges of para-athletic sports. 7. Executor and Stray Kitten. Sweet and humorous dynamic between an executor come cafe owner and a coming-of-age stray kitten. So wholesome. A 9. Konjuki. Now hear me out. This is an insane cancelled story that will give you whiplash with the amount of ecchi that they've crammed into this story, with every chapter being more insane than the last. An 8. Like a Butterfly. A beautiful story of rekindling dreams with a dramatic twist that hit you right in the feels. I would have scored this higher if there were fewer characters and no bonus chapters, but turns out images can make me cry. Who knew? 8.5. It may be my fault that my childhood best friend's breasts got bigger. Try saying that 3 times as fast. A humorous yet sweet perspective on the consequences of stress-related illnesses. 8.5. Steam Riviere in Amber. Immaculate storytelling with a captivating art style, combining steampunk with feminine tranquility. Did I mention the physical book is spectacular? I'll happily give this 9 tarot cards out of 10. If I get serious, I can kill you. I wish it focused more on dominating muscle mummy energy, but there were still some levels of enjoyment, so a 7. Haru's Curse, a blossoming romance story that came together in a dramatically morbid way. I'd give it an 8. Enma, a vague, poor interpretation of the first arc of Bleach within a one-shot format. I literally wanted to bleach my eyes after reading this. It's a 2.5 out of 10. Guraku, sickening action with a great sprinkle of mystery. 8.5 out of 10. Asaoka High School Baseball Team Journal. An inoffensive one-shot that had very similar vibes to Slam Dunk, but condensed into a much shorter length. With that, it gets an inoffensive 6.5. Kusakago Mountain, a heartwarming story about self-worth and revitalizing passions. 8.5. Drip Drip, This was incredibly engaging, and it had art that only enhanced the madness of the protagonist, Mako, a true personification of Paru Itagi's work. I'll happily give this 9.5 nosebleeds out of 10. The last manga I read in April was Romantic Killer. This was such a struggle to read. I was expecting romantic serial killers similar to Yakuza Fiancé, but instead I got an imposter romance shoujo in which the protagonist had all of her interesting traits just ripped away. So I have to give this a 2. Love Tractor. This is sheer romantic perfection. It filled my heart with so much love and joy, as well as solidifying the fact that rural lifestyles do just bring out the beauty in life. I go a lot more detail into why I love this story so much in my underrated manhwa video, so I'd recommend checking that out. This is clearly a 10 out of 10. Gal Gohan. An ecchi culinary journey with a relatively disappointing ending, so it gets a 7. Witch's Printing Office. It was very overwhelming with lore and characters, and it never achieved the wholesome, cozy narrative I was expecting, but it was still okay, so 5.5. Ami Nochi Balloon. A sweet one-shot that follows the hopes of superstition. It didn't blow me away, so a 6. Glass Beauty. A modest interpretation of fragility of high school beauty. A 6. My Poison Princess is still cute. This cute princess most certainly had a cute story with a wonderful cast of characters. It gets a 9. Manly Diets. This was a questionably romantic tale that felt diminishing towards plus-size individuals rather than making them feel comfortable in an environment. I was more captivated by the relationship of Tanaka and Maron by the end of the series, so it gets a 5.5. Bastard. What a thrilling manhwa. It was the drama mama. Shout out to my partner for recommending me this. It was so good. But I'd give it a 9.5. It was just lacking just a little something. Mushroom Girls Are in Love. Beautifully captivating illustrations. But the characters were indistinguishable and the lore of the world could have been fleshed out a lot more. So I'd give this a 5 out of 10. Cells at Work Code Black. This was a darker toned edition of the predecessor, but still very educational. I need the white blood cell to just hold me in her beautiful muscular arms and tell me sweet lullabies. This is getting a 7.5. Natsu no Owari, a visually captivating one-shot that comfortably conforms to the shoujo high school romance template. It didn't blow me away, so 6.5. Nejimani Mano-san. A short romance tale featuring a main character undergoing empowering transformations. However, my hatred for the other main character prevents me from enjoying this to the fullest. A 6. Twilight Hour. A beautifully told shoujo tale about 2 high school students that had me transported back to reading Josie Tiger and the Fish. However, much like Ami Noche Balloon, this didn't blow me away, so it gets a 7.5. Cells at Work Lady. Honestly, this was the best variation of the Cells at Work franchise. Didn't realize a seinen universe existed in the female body, but I hope the cells in my body are having a spectacular time. I also found this a lot more educational than the other renditions of this franchise, so this gets an 8.5. Twilight. This was such a dull romance narrative with a spoiled brat protagonist. These aren't my favorite character types, so it was really hard to enjoy this. 3.5. Majime Succubus Hiragi-san. A comedic ecchi succubus tale that left me wanting to read the expanded story. 8.5. Sparkling Days. A sweet BL about reigniting passion, however, it would have benefited for being a longer length story. So it gets a 6. Kiyomizu Ihora Doesn't Know Love. A relatable story on discovering what love is all about. This gets a 7. My best friend confessed to me in a dating sim, an isekai into a yandere simulator, with protagonists that had the occasional frustrating moments, so it gets a 7. Ending July with Auto Man! Love will overcome all! Fantastic action and self-awareness, with a spectacular display of romantic affection without it being too cheesy. Everyone needs to read this, so it gets a 9.5. Starting August with Takeo-chan Bukurai Roku. It was one of the most visually unique mangas that I've ever read, but I did wish it had a different high-level narrative direction, so for that I'm giving it a 6. Scarlet Secret. Kurapika wishes their scarlet-eyed narrative was as interesting as this spicy tale. I thoroughly enjoyed this, so it gets an 8. Romance Dawn version 1. It was fascinating to see the prototype of One Piece before it became the modern day phenomenon. I'd have to say Silk was the most sympathetic character, almost being a hybrid between Nami and Zoro. This gets an 8.5. The Fate of Their Inconsistent Love. A very cute story about how video games can be the catalyst of love. The bonus stories were also very wholesome, so it gets an 8. Now we're jumping into the spooky month of October, starting with Nayuta of the Prophecy. This has to be one of Fujimoto's most wholesome stories, with the main protagonist kind of reminding me of Toge from JJK, while having a similar high-level narrative to Rory Dragon. This also gets an 8 out of 10. Beauty and the Feast. I expected Gal Gohan, but I was pleasantly surprised the relationship followed a different direction and a more heartwarming path. This was a tale of rediscovering happiness after tragic life events. Also, an 8. Cinderella the BL. I've never seen a title more accurate to explaining the narrative of the story. This is just Cinderella, but with the sauciness of a BL manhwa. It literally does what it says on the tin, so it gets a pretty solid 6. Black Sesame Salt and Custard Pudding. This really took the time to showcase trust being built between these two characters, and it turns out some intoxicated romantic choices can be pretty good. I didn't expect to love this as much as I did, so it happily gets a 9 out of 10. Old Man Never Die. There was a sweet sentiment among these opposing fantasy characters. It had the potential to dial up the emotional value, but I just feel like it missed the mark on that. So for that, it gets a 6.5. Starting November with Blade Girl. A truly inspiring story that I found much more consumable and enjoyable than Run on Your New Legs. 8 out of 10. Whitebeard and Bone. Who'd have thought a story about Santa Claus and a female adult worker could be so incredibly sweet? Paru Itagaki never fails to amaze me in her stories. This also gets an 8. My Girlfriend is an Insect. This was a far more tame version of Kunchuki. However, it does remind me that I need more Monster Girl stories in my life. So it gets a 7. Paru's Graffiti. Following my Paru Itagaki streak, I found this to be a fascinating peek into an unhinged mangaka. So I'd give this 8 Legoshis out of 10. Majime Succubus Hiragi-san. Following the one-shot, I decided to read the fully fleshed manga. I never thought I'd be saying this, but a story about extracting male juices is quite wholesome and sweet. I wish I had more focus on the main protagonist couple rather than the supporting characters, as I just wanted to see their romance blossom. So for that, it gets a 7. I'm Kinda Chubby and I'm Your Hero. This was nice, but it could have been expanded a lot more, and I didn't appreciate the size-shaming undertones, so it gets a 6.5. Fish and Water. An unexciting romance that had me reliving COVID memories, brought to you by the same author as My Brother's Husband. This gets a 6 out of 10. I'm a wolf, but my boss is a sheep. A tale of multi-species individuals working together both professionally and romantically. I did find this to have an extra edge over the previous 8s that I mentioned, so this gets an 8.5. Ayashimon. An unexpected end to a gang-focused narrative with a relatively uninteresting protagonist. It's getting 6 out of 10. Run Away With Me, Girl. Just look at these beautiful and emotional runaway lesbians. I love this. It easily gets a 9.5. My Sister, the Cat. Imagine adorable cats mixed with the overwhelming love that comes with foster families. This gets a 9. The Metalhead Next Door. I found that the romance and the character development felt just a little bit too rushed. It could have done with being much longer. So for that, it gets 5.5. My Dad's the queen of all VTubers. It had funny moments, but overstayed its welcome ever so slightly. However, it did make me want to share the VTuber spotlight with my father, so I gave it a 7. Shadow Student Council Vice President gives her all. This was utterly, and I mean utterly, ridiculous, and somehow ecchi without being perverted. I loved it, so I gave it a 9. The Wizard and the Red Pilgrim. Just hypnotic, both visually, narratively, and emotionally. I tweeted out that this wasn't manga. This was art. This also gets a 9. How Shimmer's parents became mates. This was a heartwarming BL of arch enemies becoming lovers. That starts with an extraordinarily in-depth anatomy lesson of alpha, omegas, and betas. 8 out of 10. And that's it. That was everything I finished in 2024. Some good, some bad, and definitely some ugly. My goal for next year is to read some much longer series like Claymore, Fruits Basket, and Sander. So with that in mind, I'm off to go read a lot more manga. Have a good one. Peace.